Hello, everybody. This is Jesse here, and we're going to be getting started on another book reading in the midst of the other uh, booklet that I'm doing regarding Simon Peter versus Simon Magus, which I will be getting back to as well. Um, and I know those that may have saw my little, very brief, short video. I just want to let everyone know I thank you for the support, and I'm not giving up. Okay, even though I got a interesting struggle that can drive some people nuts. I will be carrying on, and I will overcome it. I will overcome it. So, but we're gonna read a book that is written by John Daniel, which is called The Grand Design Exposed, and this is a very, very well researched book. There's a lot of history in this book that you may have not heard before, and all this history is well documented within this book. And what I'm going to do is at the end of each reading segment, because it's really detailed nicely, like by chapters and sections, and that's how I'm going to be reading this. Is I'm just going to be reading, I'm going to try to read a section. I can't say each day, and at the end of each section, he gives you quotes to certain sources, and you can go and look at those sources and stuff like that. I'll provide the sources of the certain quotes that were used, or if there is links that I can provide for you, I will provide those for you. Or you just look at the description box and you can just type it in on your search engine, and you will be able to get the source. But the title of this book is called The Grand Design Exposed. Okay? And we're going to dive right into it. And we're going to start with Chapter 1, Section 1. And Chapter 1 is basically called Manufactured Crisis, A Plot for World Change. And Section 1 is called Planet in Pain. Planet in Pain. Okay. So, I flip to page 1 here. And again, this is written by John Daniel. I'm pretty sure the book is still readily available, but at the same time, like near the end of this book, there might be some doctrinal differences that I do not necessarily agree with. So if there's anything that might not make sense as to what as to what I've been sharing lately, I will point that out so that I'll cut off the comment or what have you. But besides that, he's done a very marvelous job of research homework to get this out, and it's a marvelous piece of work. And I believe this is something that anybody that's in the researching field, as far as prophetic researching and investigative journalism, as far as Catholicism and the Antichrist and prophecy, I think this is a pretty decent book to have. Again, it's not the Bible, okay? So I'm not putting this at a higher standard. But he lays out some very important puzzles in history that gives you more dots to connect. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 1, Manufactured Crisis, A Plot for World Change. Section 1, Planet in Pain. And this was published in 1999, by the way, so... Without question, the world today is in quite a predicament. Certainly never before in the history of our planet has it ever been so greatly stressed upon mankind's consciousness the overwhelming ills that are facing our world. The urging of these continued reports seem to leave us in no doubt that if we, as a world, do not get our act together, it may be too late. The fact is, they tell us that our world is facing a crisis hour. I want to emphasize the word they. Okay? They tell us that our world is facing a crisis hour, approaching its final destiny. We must act universally now if we are to avert a worldwide catastrophe, so they say. We hear disturbing reports about our world environment. They tell us the ozone layer is rapidly being destroyed, causing global warming. Today it's called climate change. The use it and throw it away lifestyle of the West is creating massive amounts of solid waste at an incredible rate, of which much is non-biodegradable materials, setting off the separate and recycle it craze. Hazardous chemicals are being dumped into the delicate ecosystems by industries. Oil spills are polluting the oceans and waterways. Now, again, this was written in 1999. I mean, think of all the oil spills and stuff like that that we've had since then. Acid rain is destroying forests. The much-needed oxygen-producing rainforests of South America are being annihilated. We are incessantly being bombarded by these and many other complex environmental issues that tend to haunt and restrict us. We are told there must be a now or never, very bold world leadership. If Mother Earth is to be spared a rendezvous with death. So, I mean, this is basically the call that has been permeated and magnified greatly, especially within this last year, as the aspect of a very bold world leadership. Okay, so I'll leave you to speculate on what's going on with this very bold world leadership. Another problem facing the whole world is the accelerating pace of global financial breakdown. It is a world economic crisis looming on the horizon that threatens the very stability of the society of man. Russia's financial and banking sector is utterly bankrupt. Again, this was in 1999. Leading nationalist calls for re-regulation of that economy. The Japanese banking system, with 1.5 trillion in non-performing loans, is teetering on the edge. Japan's ninth largest bank, the Long-Term Credit Bank, with $190 billion in assets, has been insolvent for half a year. The world's stock exchanges are plummeting. Asia and South America's banks are tottering. American banking giants such as Bank of America, Citicorp, and Bankers Trust have reported July through August 1998 losses of $228 million, $300 million, and $340 million, respectively, in bad investments, mostly in Russia. And then, ready to explode with the slightest accident, is the world's $130 trillion derivatives market. They tell us that the 1990s will decide the economic future of the world. It has been made quite clear to us that in order to secure peace and economic security for the whole world, there must be a well-directed international trading system. The New Age economic plan is pretty well outlined in Alice A. Bailey's book, The Externalization of the Hierarchy, published by Lucis Trust. It points out that there will be a, quote, complete economic reorientation by which humanity is relieved of all economic anxiety, unquote. Quote, when the adjuster of finances appears, national currencies will have been largely superseded. not only by a system of barter, but by a universal monetary exchange, unquote. That is very unique because, especially with what just happened a few weeks ago, I want you to take a look at how closely united this New Age agenda of a world economy is with socialism's agenda, Catholic socialism's agenda of a world economy is. Okay? So I want to briefly hint on that with this article here, which states that Pope discussed moral economy with Bernie Sanders before a Greece trip. So Bernie Sanders met with the Pope in the Vatican. He also gave a interesting speech at the Vatican and these types of things. And I just want to go ahead and read this for a little bit, which states, Vatican City, April 16th, Pope Francis has met U.S. presidential candidate Bernie Sanders in the Vatican on Saturday morning, and the two discussed the need for morality in the world economy before the pontiff left for a visit to the Greek island of Lesbos. Columbia University professor Jeffrey Sachs told Reuters that the meeting took place in the Vatican guest house where the Pope lives and where Sanders had spent the night after addressing a Vatican conference on social justice. Okay, so let's go ahead and play a little bit of this video clip here.
I have been enormously impressed by Pope Francis speaking out and his visionary views about creating a moral economy, an economy that works for all people, not just the people on top. And what he has said over and over again, we cannot allow the market just to do what the market does. That's not acceptable. We have got to ingrain moral principles into our economy. I believe that the Pope has played a historical and incredible role in trying to create a new world economy and a new vision for the people of our planet. I have long been a supporter of the economic vision of Pope Francis. Pope Francis's encyclical has played a profound role in turning many people's minds around about the urgency of the moment in terms of dealing with climate change. So when I received this invitation, I know it's taking me away from the campaign trail for a day, but when I received this information, it was so moving to me that it was something that I could just simply not refuse to attend.
Thank you.
Okay, so here you see Bernie Sanders giving his full support of Pope Francis' view on this moral economy, world global economy, and these types of things. And if you just backtrack a couple of years, and you realize what Pope Benedict's view of the economy is, they are essentially the same thing. I mean, they're one and the same. They both agree with one another on the same aspects. So it's nothing new, okay? So let's go ahead and look at this real quick. This is from 2009, and a headline from USA Today stated that Pope calls for a God-centered global economy. And it states here at the top here, Pope Benedict XVI today called for reforming the United Nations and establishing a true world political authority with real teeth to manage the global economy with God-centered ethics. Okay, so if we scroll down here a little bit, they get into Benedict XVI's encyclical Caritas and Veritate, and they go into it a little bit, and then right here, you're going to see what this God-centered economy is. The encyclical also echoes Benedict's many speeches saying that to reach sound a global economy, every responsibility and commitment must be rooted in the values of Christian truth. Okay? Without that, he says, there is no social conscience and responsibility. Neither, he says, are more good sentiments enough. Human progress requires God, and today's choices concern nothing less than the destiny of man. So, this moral global economy has to be God-centered, and it has to be rooted in the values of Christian truth. Now, with the videos that I do exposing Catholicism, exposing the Vatican, the Antichrist, the man of sin, the son of perdition, and the history of the popes and what they have said, especially on the views of socialism and these types of things, can you see which brand of Christian truth is he talking about here? I mean, certainly he's not talking about biblical Christian truth, but he has to be talking about Catholic's brand of Christian truth. And if you look at the structures of the Catholic Church here, which is basically the same structure as Mithraism, is you have 7 steps, 7 levels. You have the laity, you have the deacons, the priests, the bishops, archbishops, cardinals, and then you have the Pope. So the Pope is at the head of this church. And so what they need is basically exactly what externalization of the hierarchy stated, which is let's see where I can find it here. It states that, quote, complete economic reorientation, the externalization of the hierarchy, published by Lucius Truss, it points out that there will be a complete economic reorientation by which humanity is relieved of all economic anxiety. When the adjuster of finances appears, national currencies will have been largely superseded, not only by a system of barter, but by a universal monetary exchange. And this quote-unquote adjuster of finances is basically a punch word for a world leader. And this world leader, well, you're looking at it. It is the leader of the only church that can present Christian truth in regards to a world economy. Quote-unquote Christian truth. Okay? So, and all the people of the world gobble it up. Even the atheists, even secular humanism, they all gobble it up. So what does that tell you? That tells you that this Christian church, the Roman Catholic Church, is not Christian. Okay? It is something else. It is a counterfeit Christianity, yes. But you have all the people of the world agreeing with these economic thoughts of Pope Francis, thus agreeing with what Pope Benedict had to say. So, this is that world leader. Bernie Sanders gives the Pope his praise and support with all of these issues and these types of things as well. So that's why I wanted to kind of segue away from that after reading that little quote from Externalization of the Hierarchy by Alice A. Bailey. So let's go ahead and continue. The 27th of April 1998 issue of Time magazine ran a cover feature article titled "The Future of Money. What the big mergers mean. Are banks really necessary? Will Microsoft control it all?" The article emphasized that the electronic or Omni card and a cashless society is fast approaching us where cash transactions will be prohibited. Plastic debit cards must then be used to pay bills so that funds can be instantly and efficiently removed from your bank accounts to theirs. All will be compelled to join the system or lose the privilege to buy or sell. Aren't we heading in that direction more so today? However, this is but a small price to pay when considering the uniformity and convenience you receive in return, so they say. But over and above all the other financial ills facing our distressed world is one that seems to lurk in the background worse than the bubonic plague of the 1300s. And this was, like, again, this book was written in 1999, so um, you got to think in terms of the Y2K scare and these types of things, and, you know, which obviously turned out to be a huge ruse, but. And it's the Y2K year, 2000 computer meltdown or computer millennium bug. Whether real or a hoax, which ended up being a hoax, we are being psyched out into believing that there could be utter chaos worldwide. And, I mean, that was a big thing. You know, I mean, I remember it. You know, everybody was talking about it. Year 2000, you know, everything's going to just fall apart. um, so, the potential result, a global power failure that would bring industry to a stop. Transportation will stop, government social security checks stop, and a possible bank run that could bankrupt banks all over the world. However, what if it turns out to be just some hysteria fraud? Which it was. What would those who are manipulating us really have to gain? For one thing, someone would make a pile of money to fix the so-called problem, but more important, there is no doubt of the impressionable effects it would have on the general public. Something similar to the villagers and the shepherd boy who thought it amusing to falsely cry wolf, so that when a true crisis actually does arrive, everyone will turn a deaf ear thinking it to be another joke, and not wanting to be fooled again with refuse to respond, but there really is nothing to worry about, so they tell us. And see, that's the whole thing with all these people, especially on the internet, on YouTube today, promoting all this fear and, oh, certain things are going to happen on this day, and, you know, Nibiru, Planet X, and all this kind of stuff. The rapture doctrine, that one too. You know, all these people having these so-called dreams and visions and these types of things. So when the real crap hits the fan, and all these people that were so-called warning everybody of something terrible coming, crying wolf too many times, they're just not going to buy into it anymore. And so therefore, they're going to go along with the system of this world. Because they have been teaching lies. The people that are shouting out these messages have been teaching lies for so long that they just don't believe it anymore. You had the Y2K bug. You had, and this hysteria was all planned out by design. You had 2012. You had, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Political unrest and constant fear of war is another very real problem that is kept before us to keep the world in a state of distress and unbalance. All you gotta do is look at the Middle East. We do not have to be reminded of the ongoing Middle East crisis. First Iran, then Iraq, working to achieve military superiority with their intercontinental ballistic missiles, with either nuclear or chemical warheads that threaten world peace. Nations hungry to acquire the power of mass death, thinking nothing of stealing and cheating and lying to achieve their ambitions. Nor do nations with nuclear capabilities have any scruples of clandestinely selling nuclear technologies to nations who want it. So just when the world was beginning to think it was safe from the nukes, India's joy for her 5 underground nuclear explosions, May 1998, sent shudders throughout the world. When the age of nuclear terror seemed over, the specter is back. So which country will show off its atomic prowess next? And no one even wants to think about what would happen should a nuclear device fall into the hands of some terrorist. The world is asking, is the nuclear arms race back on again? Will we ever devise effective ways to control the nuclear beast? Even as these words are being typed, December 1998, Iraq is being bullied and again bombed with innocent people being murdered on the pretense of world peace. But of course, for the sake of world peace and harmony among nations, we are told the world urgently needs an international peace or police-keeping force. We certainly can't overlook the worldwide drug scene that is ravaging the very heart and soul of our society either. What family today has not been affected in some personal manner by the diabolical scourge? Drugs cannot be a more ingenious and efficient means inflicted on society to self-destruct, to create brainless zombies that takes away an individual's mind to think and the ambitions to be a success. Other than a life of crime and shiftlessness, drugs have turned cities today into literal battle zones with their gang wars, violent robberies, looting, muggings, rapes, shootings, and killings that rock the streets. Drug users become immediate victims and prey as they expose and submit themselves to the lowest of moral values. Their drug environment then becomes a breeding ground, stimulating free sex that results in abortions as birth control, homosexuality and AIDS, with lives and families destroyed, and children abused that grow up very much confused. As an invention from hell, drugs fulfills its intended purpose splendidly. As jails are filled to overflowing, we are told that an all-out war on drugs has to be declared. The enforcement of these quote-unquote tougher laws requires additional tiers of expensive government. Of the $7.9 billion that former President George Bush allotted to the war on drugs during his administration, the bulk of the money went to swell the budget of 58 federal agencies and 74 congressional committees already engaged in the war on drugs, quote-unquote. And yet, drugs seem to be as prevalent today as when before the war was declared. Is it possible that the United States of America, the greatest military superpower the world has ever known, that has the ability and technology to send men to the moon, if you believe that, and outer space, and to launch spy satellites that surveils every corner of the globe, cannot win the war on drugs, and has to admit defeat? That conclusion seems a little doubtful. But, to the untrained eye, in the aspect of the whole thing with the moon and stuff like that, but you have to look at this, at a secular point of view too, which is very true. Here you have the United States, which is capable, supposedly, of sending men to the moon with all these satellites and stuff like that, even though we haven't went back there, and outer space, but yet we can't defeat this little pesky war that was declared roughly over 20 years ago. Perhaps a quick peek behind the scenes to reveal one tiny area may give us just a little different viewpoint. For example, it is well established that George Bush was quite actively involved in drug trafficking, not only from Central and South America, but from the Golden Triangle of northern Burma as well. As a duplicity and read his lips, he could quite willingly promote the international drug trade that brought him incredible personal financial profit, and at the same time also declare a war on drugs for personal political profit. But keep in mind there is something much, much larger lurking in the shadows than just personal profit that is motivating the drug traffic. But to shed a ray of light on the position of the U.S. government and its leaders, there was a very revealing story of all places in the U.S. News and World Report dated March 26, 1990, on page 16. Read it carefully. So this is from the U.S. News and World Report dated March 26, 1990, on page 16. Quote, "For more than a decade, Kun Sa, the warlord of opium, has flooded Washington with offers to end the poppy production within his Golden Triangle fiefdom in exchange for financial aid. The U.S. has not responded, and this year the region's crop could double from the levels of just a few years ago. Attorney General Dick Thornburgh unsealed an indictment against a man considered responsible for 40% of the U.S. heroin supply, but Sa is not likely to be booked soon. In the remote hills of Burma, a private army of thousands protect him." Unquote. So what the U.S. News and World Report is stating is that General Kun Sa will stop his shipments amounting to 40% of the heroin supply if the U.S. will send his nation financial aid, and from other sources. He wants another agricultural crop that he can grow that the U.S. will buy from him so that his economy will function without drug money. What the story does not say is that the 1,200 metric tons of refined heroin per year worth on the street, an amount equal to 10% of America's gross national product, is being shipped from Thailand on U.S. Air Force cargo planes. Also, what the story did not say is that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers built a 2-lane road back into the North Burma mountains so that these shipments could be brought out on trucks instead of the backs of mules. No wonder the Bush administration, quote unquote, has not responded. As stated in the article, okay. For more than a decade, Kun Sa, the warlord of opium, has flooded Washington with offers to end the poppy production within his Golden Triangle fiefdom in exchange for financial aid. The U.S. has not responded. So could it be that the no-win war on drugs serves a greater and a more secret interest, under the pretext of rescuing people from the incalculable perils of rampaging mobs seeking a desperate fix? Or the looting of their homes and ravaging their women. People willingly give up a little freedom and liberty for what they believe will be peace and safety. That is why we are told we need more police, more judges, more jails, more prisons, more and longer punishments. The power elite and government leaders at the top are immune to punishment, and they set up their offshore banks to launder drug dollars in the billions. It is these same people that tell us now that we need tougher gun laws, that our society must be more stringently regulated in order to curb the drug-related epidemic of crime and lawlessness. Perhaps a national police state to restore and maintain law and order, we are told. Without a doubt, we are kept well informed today by those who want us to be keenly aware of our world's condition. But has it ever occurred to you that someone may be hoodwinking us, that we might be victims being set up and conditioned to accept, quote-unquote, kind of love this word, change. Change in the social structure of the world at large, and change in your own lifestyles? Whether you want to believe or accept it or not, this idea of change is part of a worldwide revolution that is now in progress, that you will soon come to recognize fully as the not-so-benevolent New World Order. Think about this, citizens of the world, if you will even dare to think contrary to what you have been programmed to believe. But are we all so gullible, so naive, so blind as to not see through the clever maneuvers the power brokers behind the scenes are manipulating us into? Are we to seriously believe that unless mankind acts right now, this very decade, that the world situation is so hair-raisingly critical that life on our planet is going to cease to exist? Of course, we've been well informed of the nuclear weapons that can overkill our race 10 times over, if the powers that be so desire. But what about the so-called climate crisis, the economic and Y2K crisis, that the intellectual computer designers could not seem to foresee? The chaos they were creating only 30 years away, a food crisis when grain is rotting in the silos, drugs with its no-win war policy, that is spawning an ever-expanding circle of moral degenerates, where moral decline reaches even the highest levels of government, as our nation is victimized and divided by the President Clinton scandal? Do you begin to see maybe a little suspicious trend here? So we're going to end this reading here. And, I mean, obviously this is basically an introduction to the rest of the book, so we're just giving you... So basically, John Daniel is basically just giving you an overview of the world at large. Okay, what is basically being fed to you openly. Okay, but eventually we're going to come to a point where we're going to peel away the mask to see what is actually being done and how these events that shape our world today is to condition us to accept something that could ultimately determine our eternal soul, essentially. So, This is where I'm going to end this reading, and we'll pick up on Chapter 1, Section 2, entitled New World Order. Until next time we come together. So thank you for listening. Truth be told, truth be known. Stay safe. God bless. See you next time. Bye-bye.